So, in the interest of discussion, and the point being to get to the ins and outs of this case with all the facts presented that we give to the public. In our group, the Darlie Routier War Room, one of our long-term members of non-support, Mark Cowart, brings up a very good point about the police work done at 5801 Eagle Drive in the month of June 1996. And some of the missing police work. It's something that may have been overlooked. And I want to discuss it now. From the group Darlie Routier War Room Supporters and Non-Supporters Battleground, Mark Cowart has been around for quite a while. He brings up some interesting points. I've had arguments with him. He believes that Darlie is guilty, but he wants everything to fall into place in a correct order in a perfect world. And what he brings up is the fact that Karen Neal, the friend and nurse that lived across the street from Darlie with her husband Terry, was able to enter the crime scene twice that night. The first time, her testimony clearly indicates that the police escorted her upstairs to retrieve the dog, Domain, who was barking and throwing a fit. Her testimony is interesting about that as well because, she also says that Domain does that when strangers are around. She also makes it clear that she can hear him barking from across the street before she even got over there. But that's not what I want to discuss. The lack of that dog barking at any stranger that may have been downstairs. Dogs can smell blood. They can sniff out danger. The dog was not barking at any unknown intruder. The fact that Karen Neal went into that house twice. Again, first she was escorted by police. The second time, she said they were working on Darlie on the porch. And that she went in between the kitchen and the family room. And that she could see Devin laying there. And she was asked, was anyone in the house that you could see? And she said, no, nobody that I could see. So was she in the crime scene alone? Unsupervised, unescorted? Could she very well have inadvertently touched that glass table that was just a few feet away from where she said she stood? Could she have touched some blood? Because that's a blood print, 85J. So Mark and I discussed it, and some other people discussed it. It was raising a little bit of issue in our group. I think it's a good point, but I want to discuss it further. Mark is a professional person. He's been around for a long time. So what he found was, and I've never seen this particular note before. I've never went looking for it either. A criminalist with South Region Crime Laboratory, Arizona. These are the people that were printed, that he saw, that he looked at, that this person looked at. The fingerprints. This is another criminalist that took a look at some of the prints to compare them against 85I and 85J. This one here, the same thing. But they did not add Karen Neal's name to that list. They were looking to find out whose print that was. So there goes the Darlie Routier tunnel vision. They wanted to know whose print that was. Now, Mark's contention is this not only proves that Karen Neal was not fingerprinted, it proves that the police who allowed her entry failed to include her on the list of people that accessed the crime scene. It was either intentional or incompetence. I do believe that there should have been way more documentation as to Karen Neal's entrance to the house. Now, we know that they felt like there was a need for an escort the first time when she got the dog out. But she testifies again that the paramedics are working on Darlie on the porch and that she steps into the house. She says she's in between the family room and the kitchen, which is where a lot of the blood was. And that glass table would have been right behind the small couch just on the other side of the breakfast bar, just a couple feet away from Karen. Now, this is my argument with Mark is I don't believe that anybody would leave her in that house alone. I don't know if they're taking it out of context or not, but she does clearly say she didn't see anyone else in the house. And she was standing right where she could see the kitchen, the utility room, the Roman room, all that. She was standing right in the middle. She said she didn't see anybody in there. I don't get that because Darlie Routier's family and friends say there were people all over that scene, trampling all over stuff. Okay, so I don't understand why or how she could be left in there alone. But if she was, that's an issue. The second point that I wanted to make in regards to this little banter, which I consider good between me and Mark Cowart, is the fact that Karen Neal, in her own words, testifies that she's a well-rounded nurse working in triage all over the place in the hospital. We know that 85J is a print that was in blood. I can't see Karen Neal, as a trained nurse who's well-rounded by her own testimony, touching anything that has blood on it without a glove. But, and my contention is this. Like I told Mark, I don't give a fuck if Karen Neal shit on that table. It has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. What it does is if that's Karen Neal's print in blood, it shows that the police failed by letting her in there. They failed by not printing her. But if that shows Karen Neal's print, bye-bye intruder. The Porterland, why was Karen Neal never printed? I'm going to bring this question to one of the RPD officers who used to work for RPD and see if I can get an answer. I think she wasn't printed because they know she didn't touch anything. But if you read the testimony of Karen Neal, which I'll even go through it, Mark Howard took time to pull it out here for us. See, he says, feel free to use this. Now, I've already dug this stuff up. But to me, it's a good point. Now, Mark is real assertive and he's real aggressive. He's like me when he's trying to make a point. And a lot of people don't like that type of assertive. I get it. So he got some of it. And he blocked a few people. But he's bringing up case-related stuff, in my opinion. This is important to me. Here's what he brings up. And I looked over this testimony too, and he just actually posted it for us. See, asked him to find it, right? And he found it. He found it, that stuff. So we're just talking. We're having a great discussion. I don't know if we can see this. Here, Mr. Cowart outlines Karen Neal's testimony. And my husband and Darren both shouted, "She's a nurse." And I said, "Yes, I need to get through." "Did you have an occasion to go into the Routier house?" "Yes, sir." As I walked into the home, I approached the entranceway between the kitchen and the living area, and I saw Devin laying on his back with a blanket covering the most part of his body, only a fraction of his right eye that I could see. "Okay, Miss Neal, was there anyone in attendance to Devin at that time?" "No, sir." "Okay, was there anyone else in the house that you saw at that time?" "No, sir." "Did you subsequently leave and go back outside?" "Okay, now later on early that morning, did you have an occasion to enter the house and retrieve the little dog?" "Yes, sir." "All right." So she went in and peeked in there first. And then later on, they escorted her in there. So my contention is that while Larry Byford and Brian Kochak and probably one of the police officers had Darlie on the front porch on the gurney, they were tending to Darlie, that maybe Karen just slipped in that door unseen. Very possible. But when she says that she didn't see anyone in the house, I have a hard time with that unless they were all out there tending to Darlie. Because she had just been attacked by a knife-wielding intruder, don't you know? So she says that one time she walked in up to the front of the kitchen and the family room, and that she came right back out. They may not have seen her do that. Because I know that entrance to the scene was denied to even the chief of police. I know that Lieutenant Jack Grant made it a point that he wanted to conserve this scene. He was not going to have issues with this crime scene. Now, if let's say they exhume Karen Neal and print her. Boy, wouldn't that make Darlie's family mad if they exhumed their friend like that? That's Darlie's best friend. I would consider Karen Neal more likely to be Darlie's best friend than Basha, whom in the very future there may be another interview with her. Darren and Darlie were said to have paid the Neal's mortgage a couple different times while Karen was sick and wasn't able to work. I know that Mr. Neal had a great job. I believe he worked for Texas Instruments. So I don't understand where the lack of money was unless they were overextended. We also know that she took care of Drake for a day and she took Domain. We also know that her daughter spent quite a bit of time over at Darlie Routier's house, even though Darlie was giving her Zima and weed behind her parents' back. But this is very important as to the integrity of the crime scene, which is Mark's point. That if they let her in there unseen. Now I can see them when they escorted her to the top of the stairs and she got the dog and they escorted her out, they could see every movement she was making. There wasn't a whole lot of blood in that area. There was nothing she could step in. So I can see them saying, well, we don't need to print her because, she was with us the whole time. But if while these medics are working on Darlie on the front porch, she slips right in and comes right back out, that doesn't mean she's in the house alone. There was a time that Waddell and Walling went upstairs. And they could have been upstairs while she did that. I would think that they didn't know she was in there alone. But when she testified to that on the stand, I don't understand why the defense, Doug Mulder, didn't take that and say, you were in the scene alone? There's nobody around? Did you touch anything? I don't see why he didn't use that to sensationalize and draw attention to shoddy police work. I know that he resorted to tactics such as trying so diligently to get the two detectives to plead the fifth. He wanted that to be seen and heard. He called for a mistrial on that one. He didn't have facts to go by, so he had showboating. He had courtroom sensationalism. So I don't know why he didn't jump on that. I also don't know why the prosecution didn't jump on that. But it was testified to in court. So according to what we have in testimony with Karen Neal, we have someone who entered the crime scene undocumented and possibly could have left that print there. What do you think? This is good for supporters and non-supporters across the board. For the supporters, it shows that the crime scene was compromised and that people were allowed to enter it without the knowledge of the police. It just shows bad police work. And for us, it shows if that's Karen Neal's print, you take 85J and roll it up, write it down on a piece of paper, shove it up your ass, because that means no intruder. So what do you guys think? This is two sections of the blood map. I believe that Mark put this in place. It shows where Damon's body was found. This is the entry that Karen Neal said that she came into. And she said that she could see Devin's body. So that means she was in there. And a little bit lightened up, a little bit bigger right here. Karen Neal was just inches away from where that print was found. Inches. Let's discuss it.